Welcome back, my friends. I know it has been way too long since you have heard from me, and I cannot wait to catch you up on everything that has been going on in the Coach Nay world for pretty much maybe the last 6 or 7 months since that you heard from me. I hope your feelings aren't too hurt, but I've had folks hitting me up. Nay, where's the podcast? Nay, I missed the Rainbow Bridge. Where you been? I'm back. Okay? I'm back. And I've got so much to catch you guys up on. So let's see. Where do we begin? Whenever I'm not quite sure where to begin, I always tell myself, just start from the beginning. So let's start there. All of my loyal listeners, you know the last time you heard from me, and you know the last thing that I told you. And you're probably wondering, how have you been doing? Well, in the last episode that you heard from me, I was sharing with you all that I was going through a major transformation and that I had recently experienced a breakup and now was learning to navigate this new life of being single again after being in a relationship for close to 4 years. And I'm not going to say that that's the reason why I've been quiet, because I handled the breakup very well, honestly. Life is the reason why I took a break. And as I stated a moment ago, I have to start from the beginning. And the beginning for me goes back to about June of 2022 when I landed my first role in corporate and began working for a property management company on their training team. And I had the pleasure of helping to build this company, a training department from the ground up. It was the first time that I'd ever worked in corporate. As you all know, I worked in the child welfare system and child protective services for more than about 15 years, 13, 14 years there. And when I decided to move to corporate, it was because I knew that I needed to take a break from social work. As much as I loved the work that I did, it had gotten to the point where work-life balance wasn't something that I even knew. I didn't know that that was something that was possible for me, because working 80 hours a week just to make ends meet was what my life looked like. And I joined this company and had a substantial jump in my pay and began to experience a little bit more flexibility to live my life because I wasn't living on pennies anymore. And I loved the work that I was doing. And the first year, I really enjoyed the company. But as time went on, we began to experience a lot of different changes in leadership and change management. And you guys already know how that thing goes. And bad leadership trickled all the way down because the fish rots from the head. And I found myself in the hospital, as you all know, and at the end of 2022, where I was able to then take that experience and put that into my book, Awareness Put Me On. And in my chapter, I Am Seeking Myself, I shared with you all what it was like when I was committed to the psychiatric hospital and stayed there for 2 weeks. Writing the book was definitely one of the bravest things that I'd ever done in my life. And this podcast is coming at a time where, if you're listening to this in real time, we just had a really big lunar eclipse that happened. If folks who follow astrology or astronomy or not, I know that this podcast is about the word, but I've spoken about these things here, and I've already shared with you all that I believe that these are tools. These are pieces of God's creation that we can use to look back towards Him to see what it is He's trying to say to us about Himself and to ourselves. And eclipses are really big for closing out chapters. When an eclipse happens, it is literally an energetic symbolization from God Himself that a cycle or an era is ending. And last night, as I was sitting underneath this lunar eclipse, there was no moon, there were no stars last night. It was nice and cool and breezy. It was beautiful. I began to think about all the things that I wanted to release that weren't going to come with me in this new season. And as a transformation coach, I'm always undergoing some sort of transformation. I'm not just guiding my clients through this, I am always transforming as well. And I felt led to go back to Awareness Put Me On. And I grabbed the copy that is at the house, and I was led to read 3 different chapters. And it was the chapter written by Miss Shantae Christian, who put together the anthology that is Awareness Put Me On, and her chapter about ceasing and desisting the internal BS. And if you've not read my book yet, I totally recommend it. It's full of 20 different voices of Black and Brown leaders about how awareness has put us on and how our leadership journeys look different when you're a person of color. And in Shantae's chapter, she was very vulnerable and shared about what life looked like when she stepped into full-time entrepreneurship after leaving corporate. And the mask, shall I say, that she was wearing at times that kept people from really knowing what was going on with her in her internal world, the battles that she was facing, the empty bank account, the unpaid invoices, the crying herself to sleep at night and then waking up smiling every day. And I resonated with that so much because that is what the transition from corporate to full-time entrepreneurship has been for me. And I've spoken very freely here about my exit from corporate and the fact that I didn't choose entrepreneurship for myself. This was a God choice where He literally threw me into it. And it's been a little more than 18 months now that I've been navigating this new space. And there have been plenty of times where I have cried myself to sleep, like Shantae has said in her chapter. But then the next day I've got this smile on my face. And the real world, the folks on the outside, may think that things that are going on with me are just fine and perfect. And the truth is that's not the truth. The truth is there's so many things that you don't see. And you don't know what someone is truly going through all the time, which is the reason why I take the position of being kind to everyone, because you just don't know what they're going through. And that may be the day that they snap. And I don't need nobody snapping on me. I don't want anybody snapping on you either. But her chapter reminded me that 2 things can be true at the same time. And life itself is full of dualities. And you have to take the good with the quote unquote with the bad, the dark with the light, the ups with the downs. Because learning to navigate life's challenges is where you grow as a person. And her chapter reminded me that it is okay to share what's going on in your world and in your life and in your heart and in your mind with other people. Because when you do that, you give God an opportunity to allow for your help to come in. But you can't receive help if you're still too afraid to ask for it. After reading Shantae's chapter, I felt led to read chapter 11 by the late, great Miss Nikki Walker. Miss Nikki passed away unexpectedly a few months ago, and it shook the Awareness Put Me On authors. I had the pleasure of meeting Miss Nikki Walker when we did our author meet and greet in Washington, D.C. in April of 2024 when the book came out. And she was such a bright light, such a beacon of light. And I hadn't read her chapter yet because none of the authors were able to read each other's chapters, except for, a few little snippets where we would share here and there. But I didn't get a chance to read her chapter until the book came out. And I was very pleased to see how intentional Shantae is in that none of us knew what each other was writing, but she put the book together in such a way that the chapters flowed. So if you open it up from page 1 and read it like a story, it's going to read like a story, even though there's 20 different stories in there. But if you want to pick it up and just read a book, or read one of the chapters about personal development or one of the chapters about spiritual growth and transformation, then you could do that. You could open up the book and go to chapter 12, which is my chapter, I Am Seeking Myself, and have a conversation with yourself and myself about faith and identity and the intersection of faith and mental health. And so I felt led to read Nikki's chapter after I read Shantae's chapter, and I felt so seen because it wasn't until I read Nikki's chapter that I knew that she and I had the same mental health challenges. And she had been navigating hers far longer than I had, with the knowledge of what she was battling with for about 25 years. Now, I've only known for about the past not even 3 years what it is that I have been dealing with, which is both anxiety and depression. More anxious, which can tend to cause me to worry a lot and worry too much about the future, and it has made it hard for me to live in the present at times. And then lesser so, but then some seasons of depression where I just don't feel motivated to do any of the things that I would normally do. And realizing that her struggle, my struggle, your struggle, the world's struggle is the same. And it is that the things that keep us stuck are the thoughts and the emotions that get trapped into our bodies. The stories that we don't tell, the things that we don't say, the help that we don't ask for. And in my chapter, Nikki was able to pass the baton to me in such a way where I allowed my transparency and vulnerability to shine in such a way where I brought you all into one of the darkest days and weeks of my life, where I told the truth and I was honest about what I was going through and what I was feeling. I'm never able to reread my chapter without getting emotional. And last night when I sat with these 3 stories, as in this very moment, my eyes began to water. And I could feel the tears. I could feel the sadness in my chest. And I can feel the unshed tears in my throat, even now, as I'm speaking to you. And I was reminded that I wrote the story for one reason and one reason only. And that reason was the advice that Shantae gave me. Tell the story that you needed when you needed it. Because if you help one person, then you've really helped 2. And the person that you sought out to help was yourself. And so in that brave act of both sharing, being honest, telling, I was able to create for myself and for other people who I may never even meet, people who, when I'm long gone and prayerfully I have left a wonderful legacy here on earth, will be able to pick up that story and say, you know what, I see myself in that. And that is the reason why I'm here, my friends. And that has always been the reason for this podcast. And there are times where I'm not able to show up here as much as I want to because I'm going through a transition. And one thing about the way that this podcast is set up and the way that my gift works is I can't speak to you if I don't have a word. And I have to wait on the Lord for my word. And in this season, the Lord shut my mouth because there were things that I still needed to work on in my heart. There were things that He didn't want me to bring with me into this new season. And until I could heal from those, I was not going to be able to show up here to speak to you about that. But now the time has come, and it is time to spill all the tea and let you know everything that has been going on with your girl, Coach Nay, since you last heard from her. And I tell you what, my friends, you're going to want to stay tuned for that because it has been a beautiful journey with so many lessons and so many nuggets. And I can't wait to drop them gems here for you all. And I can't wait for you to continue to walk with me as I walk with you, as I continue to walk with the Lord and let Christ change me from the inside out. And I look forward to us growing and learning and leading together in this space. The space that is always filled with love and truth and honesty and my no-nonsense attitude. Because I love you, friends, and I see you and I appreciate you all. So buckle up, Buttercup, because this is going to be quite a ride. And I look forward to speaking to you again real soon. And until then, my friends, be safe. and be